What is up, YouTube? It's been a long time coming for this video to be released, but here we are. I'll give you a bit of a background story for context purposes as to understand why I ventured into this little project of mine. Okay, so it all started back in 2009 when I was 14. Coincidentally half my current age, which is quite mind-boggling to think about, but I got my first laptop back then. I was not a particularly well-off kid, but had collected some money from multiple holiday gifts given to me by relatives and had the budget to buy an entry to mid-tier level laptop. This led to the purchase of my Asus K50IJ, which back in 2009 was a mid-tier laptop, and had a widescreen 16:9 display, which seemed appealing to my 14-year-old self, as it was a transition period for laptops to switch from 4:3 to the now standard 16:9 aspect ratio, which made it look modern and futuristic. The specs of the laptop also seemed appealing, as it came with 4GB of RAM and a dual-core processor, which for the time was not bad, as dual-core processors were in their infancy. It had 2GB of soldered memory and another 2GB of single-channel DDR2 memory, since the laptop was equipped with only one RAM slot. The processor was an Intel Pentium dual-core T4200, including 2 cores clocked at 2 GHz each, and a megabyte of cache. This model laptop shipped with higher specs, such as processors up to an Intel Core 2 Duo T6500, which was marginally faster, but not a huge spec bump. The graphics card this laptop had was an Intel GMA X4500M graphics onboard, which was nothing to write home about. It had a 15.6 1366 by 768 LED backlit widescreen display. It could play video up to 1080p given the frame rate was not over 30 frames per second, and supported some basic games from the time, like GTA San Andreas with medium settings at 720p, which was more or less equal to the resolution of the display, and Counter-Strike 1.6 could run fairly smooth on practically anything. The first operating system this laptop had installed was Windows XP, which did not last long and was switched for Windows 7 perhaps a week after purchase. I used it for basic tasks like surfing the web, using Microsoft Word and Excel for school endeavors, downloading and watching movies, and occasionally playing a casual game such as the mentioned titles it supported. It was never a speed demon and took a beat or two in completing most tasks, even when it was brand new, but it got the job done for the most part. It served me a good 4 to 5 years before starting to break down on me, and by this I mean it became awfully slow. The physical condition of the laptop was also an absolute mess, as I was in a fragile age during which I didn't take much care of my tech. The hinges eventually broke, and the display was starting to come out of the now broken frame. I eventually upgraded to an Acer Aspire E17, which was a larger 17-inch laptop in 2015, and put away my K50IJ in its carrying case, but never threw it away. It lived there for many years to come, until 2023, when I decided it was time to restore it. I was thinking about restoring this machine for a number of years, however it seemed overly complex, and also meant I'd have to pull in financial resources, of which I didn't have much. All in all, I started gathering parts, firstly purchasing a new lid, new hinges, a new frame, and a new keyboard to get the physical aspect of the laptop intact. After messing around and getting the physical parts arrived by time, the laptop quickly started to look better and better, and eventually I ended up with a basically almost new looking laptop. New looking in the sense of physical condition, not that this relic looked modern by any stretch of the imagination. This, however, intrigued me to dig deeper and see what I could upgrade in terms of hardware, as laptops of that era are known for their upgradability and having most components socketed as opposed to being soldered onto the motherboard, which is common for today's laptops. The first and most obvious upgrade was to exchange the slow 5400 RPM hard disk with a 2.5-inch SSD. It also became clear that I could on paper upgrade to a total of 6GB of DDR2 memory, as 2GB were soldered onto the motherboard, and I could mount an additional 4GB RAM stick into the single channel provided, bringing the total memory to 6 GB. This upgrade was not listed as a possible one on Asus's website, as it claimed the laptop topped out at 4 GB max RAM support. However, it was documented by others attempting it, and it did work for me too. I could also upgrade the processor to an Intel Core 2 Duo T9500 processor, having 2 cores clocked at 2.6 GHz each and 6 MB of cache, which would be a substantial upgrade to the Pentium processor the laptop shipped with. The laptop's Wi-Fi card could be upgraded too, as it shipped with an Azure Wave AR5895 Wi-Fi card, which was not only quite slow, but it did not have Bluetooth capabilities either. This was to be upgraded to an Intel dual-band wireless AC7260, which, as the name suggests, is a dual-band wireless card supporting faster Wi-Fi, but also had Bluetooth 4.0. The mentioned upgrades were somewhat of a safe bet, as they had been successfully attempted and documented by others on YouTube and forums alike. The last and final upgrade I wanted to do was to replace the CD/DVD reader with the second hard drive using a caddy, as I had an extra 500 GB SSHD lying around, which came in useful as CDs and DVDs are pretty much an obsolete format in 2023-2024 for the most part. All in all, everything worked, albeit with a few hiccups along the way, as older hardware requires old drivers which are not always easy to find. This was also my very first attempt at installing an OS, and I went with Windows 11, which technically this laptop was considered to be an unsupported hardware. There, however, are ways of bypassing this, and considering somebody like me, with very little knowledge on computing, was able to pull this off by following a few YouTube tutorials, it would appear to not be a super complex process. I was frankly astonished at the results, as the laptop became much faster than it was ever before, all while running a far newer OS, which almost made it look out of place on the old hardware. It didn't really become a speed demon by any stretch of the imagination. However, booting into Windows took a mere few seconds, and running Chrome with quite a few tabs, playing movies, and even testing the games I previously mentioned was a much smoother experience. I would go as far as saying it became a very useful device. If the needs of the user were limited to web browsing, writing and editing documents, and playing movies at a resolution up to 1080p. I was very satisfied with the results obtained. However, I wanted to see if I could push the system further. As much like with the RAM, which was not supposed to work, Windows 11, which was also not supposed to work, there were rumors on forums about the CPU, which was not usually mentioned, but had a slightly faster clock speed than the Core 2 Duo T9500. This processor used the same 800 MHz bus speed, but had a slightly higher thermal design power, or TDP, of 44 watts, over the T9500's 35 watt requirements. This CPU upgrade was not cost effective at all, due to it being a somewhat exotic processor release, mainly used in gaming laptops back in the day, and was not guaranteed to work either, due to the higher power demands. But I took the plunge and ordered it anyway. You are probably now itching to know what this CPU is, and it was an Intel Core 2 Extreme X9000 processor. As mentioned previously, it had a 2.8 GHz clock speed over the T9500's 2.6 GHz, which is a minuscule gain, but once it arrived, I installed it and crossed my fingers in hopes of it working. To my surprise, it worked flawlessly. Not only that, the laptop became even more responsive. After running Cinebench, a processor benchmark, the results were further solidified with a score of 785 over the 671 that the T9500 obtained, which, albeit not a great increase, was an improvement nonetheless. This being the final upgrade meant the laptop was now, as the title of the video suggests, fully restored and spec'd beyond limits. It was a fascination of mine from a frail age to attempt getting things to work that shouldn't. And albeit this is becoming increasingly more difficult as time goes by, it is impressive to see a 14-year-old machine be usable in 2024, with contemporary software running and not much hindrance in the average person's use scenarios. This is some short footage of the initial condition of the laptop before I started the restoration process. As you can see, the hinges of the laptop were broken, the screen frame was pretty much shattered too, and the keyboard was very worn and missing some keys. Here is the laptop booting into Windows after restoring it and installing all of the upgrades. As you can see, it is respectably fast given its age, and remarkable to be even operational at this stage. There is one more potential upgrade I could do to this laptop, and that would be getting a replacement battery of a higher capacity than the one it shipped with. But it is certainly not a must, and does not affect the performance of the machine when plugged into the wall. If somehow you miraculously watched this whole video, and even more surprisingly actually enjoyed my geeky rambling for the past 10 minutes or so, I thank you for your time, and should you want more content of this kind, shoot your suggestions in the comment section down below. You could also enlighten me should I have made any mistakes along the video, or have any suggestions where I may have missed out on potential upgrades. I hope you enjoyed this content, and I'll see you in the next one.